So I'm here in St. Louis ahead of their Leagues Cup matchup against Club América to kick off Club América's tenure in the Leagues Cup, their contribution to the Leagues Cup. It's going to be St. Louis's second matchup and potentially their final matchup if things don't go their way in this competition. But you have to think that St. Louis is feeling pretty good, and that's kind of what I wanted this video to be about today, because it's been a large topic of conversation, the travel that Liga MX's teams have been subjected to throughout this tournament. I asked Bradley Carnell about that in today's kind of press conference, about just how tough it is. And I think there's a lot of agreement there, not just with Liga MX's teams, but I think MLS teams feel it too. Bradley Carnell talked about, the 5-hour delay that St. Louis had in Columbus, and then they couldn't leave Columbus till the next day because of the weather. Talked about how when you travel east-west in this country, they had a road trip earlier this month where they flew from Toronto to LAFC, about how that's basically an international flight in any other league, and it's tough for them to deal with. So in Bradley Carnell's words, all they can do is offer up their facilities, which if you look at the training facility right over there, that's where Liga MX has been training, and they'll train today, tonight, and then ahead of the match tomorrow. And it's just about offering up your facilities, being a good host, and ultimately, doing the best you can to make sure that the competition on the pitch is competitive. And no team, no professional soccer player, no professional footballer wants to come into a match with such a big competitive advantage that might come from the travel, or that might come from the conditions. I think everyone wants to play on a perfect pitch in perfect conditions, because that's just, that's how competitive professional players are. They're not looking for those little advantages here and there. So I thought it was interesting, because I think it is a large talking point. You saw it in Vancouver, and games being pushed back because of travel with some of these Liga MX teams, and because of how hard, especially for the teams that have to travel to Canada for some of these games. It's interesting. It definitely puts an asterisk on what the Leagues Cup is at this point. I love the expanded format. I love the chance to see some of these Liga MX MLS matchups that you don't often see, like St. Louis, the newest club in North America, playing Club América, who is the most storied club in North America. And I think that's a fun narrative and a fun dynamic to play against. And Club América have all the ambitions in the world. They have so many high caliber players coming into a St. Louis atmosphere where it isn't necessarily highly sought after players. Outside of Edward Leuven, everyone else has, been elsewhere and been given up on, or had to go find chances. And it's kind of a us against them attitude and next man up attitude. And while there is clearly talent on this team, it's a nice little dichotomy between the two clubs and the two atmospheres. I think it'll be interesting, especially given the amount of preference and coverage that's been given to, say, Lionel Messi in the Leagues Cup versus a team like Tijuana, let's say, in that Philadelphia game. And even for a neutral observer, a lot of these matches have been pretty fun, honestly. You can tell there are some teams that are still prioritizing MLS play, obviously, and I don't think you can necessarily blame them for that, or blaming Liga MX's play in that case. But when you see a team like Miami bringing in Busquets, bringing in Messi, and starting them in last night's game against Atlanta, and Messi and Busquets kind of putting on a show in that way, it's pretty cool. I enjoy it. I enjoyed the atmosphere, and of course, seeing Lionel Messi play for the first time on U.S. soil for Miami was incredible to see, especially with the amount of space that Atlanta was giving them in this game. I think you're going to see some interesting storylines throughout this competition. And when we talked with the players earlier today too, it's definitely an environment where they want to win. They want to go far. It was asked of Jared Stroud and Jabu Lubam today in our kind of mixed zone availability of whether they would be looking forward to a break if they were to lose tomorrow or draw tomorrow and not be able to make up those points and be out of the tournament. And to a man, they all said that they'd rather be playing for silverware. Jabu Lubam said, "We love doing this and we want to play for all the silverware." Jared Stroud said it's a pretty big trophy and we want to win the big trophy. So I think that's pretty definitive, and there's prize money on the line too. No players are going to turn that down. So I think a lot of this talk of Liga MX, or of the Leagues Cup not being a proper tournament, is a little bit overblown. Players are definitely taking it seriously. Teams are taking it seriously. Obviously, there are the competitive disadvantages there, and if they are to do this tournament in a way that allows for away travel to Mexico, it adds definitely a different wrinkle, one that I think would be interesting, like seeing a lot of the MLS teams. We've seen how they've struggled in CONCACAF Champions League, and of course, anytime the U.S. men's national team or the U.S. women's national team goes to Mexico, it's always a highly contested bout, right? So it would add another interesting wrinkle. Tim Parker kind of talked about this in his availability today too. Sorry that I'm name dropping all the St. Louis City players, but Tim Parker talked about how in his time in Houston, anytime you played a Liga MX team, or in his time in New Jersey as well, anytime you played a Liga MX team, there was that little bit added something to it of the U.S.-Mexico rivalry. I think it's interesting because I never really considered that from a club perspective, but the players definitely say it's there, and they're going to be up for the matchup. Now, keys to the game for St. Louis, they're going to want to come out firing a lot quicker than they did against Columbus. I didn't do a post-game react because that game ended at 1 a.m., but it's a quick turnaround. They're going to want to build on the momentum that they saw over the second half of that match, grabbing that goal that may end up being crucial as they only lost 2-1 instead of 2-0. And there's a lot of tightening up that they need to do. The first half, it's something that we've seen inside Bradley Carnell's diamond formation this year, that there is sometimes too much space either out wide or in the midfield, and it's when they transition to their 4-2-3-1 that they've been very successful in, or their 4-2-2-2-2 that they've also, when they're playing with looks that they can throw at, which I think plays into Bradley Carnell's hand in that way. Anyway, thanks for coming along my diatribe about the Leagues Cup. Let me know what has been what you have looked forward to the most. Is it all the red cards? Is it all the calamitous officiating that's happened? Is it Leo Messi and Sergio Busquets and everything that's happened in Miami this week? It's like one big party down there. They win 4-0 over Atlanta. Man, Messi is just... he's always been my GOAT, but seeing him do what he's been doing to not just MLS defense, but to Cruz Azul when he came in his first game as well, it's potentially Miami could win the Leagues Cup, could win the U.S. Open Cup, and could make the playoffs still, with how good Busquets and Messi have been at finding space and finding those openings. But anyway, if this is your first time stumbling upon Talkin Soccer, give me a thumbs up on this video. Make sure you subscribe. I'll be back with another video today talking about the Women's World Cup and that Ireland-Canada game that was fantastic. So stick around, turn on those notifications, and again, leave me a comment below about what you're looking forward to most in this Leagues Cup. But folks, for Talkin Soccer, I have been Justin Horniker, and we'll talk very soon.